2014 Massachusetts gubernatorial election will take place on November 4th, and the campaign is heating up. As part of our political coverage, we continue our one-on-one chats with the candidates who are seeking the corner office at the State House. This morning, we welcome United Independent candidate Evan Falchuk. He's a successful entrepreneur and is the only candidate who says he's bilingual. Welcome at Urban Update, or is it Buenos Dias?
Buenos tardes, whatever you want to say today, but great to see you.
Okay, Evan, so you're running for governor. I guess, why do you want to be governor?
We've got a political system today that does not take people seriously, does not treat them seriously, doesn't represent the true concerns that they have. So I'm running because we need a new framework. That's why I founded the United Independent Party, which is based on the idea that everyone is equal, that everyone's civil rights have to be protected, and that the government has to spend our money wisely. So we need that new framework. We need new independent leadership to bring about the voters are looking for.
Massachusetts, as you know, is a pretty democratic state, and occasionally it'll vote for a Republican, I guess. What makes you think that an independent has a chance?
It's actually a very independent state. We're the most independent in the country. 53% of voters aren't enrolled in one of the two parties. But the bigger picture of this is that voters aren't participating anymore. The last statewide election, a Senate race, only 27% of voters participated. They feel as if the system isn't listening to them. They feel as if the people that get chosen to run in these races, that there's only two choices, the Democratic or Republican version. And it increasingly is disconnected from the real issues that they're facing in their lives. So when we see a state where the cost of living has been skyrocketing, driven by healthcare costs and housing costs, and elected leaders don't have a real plan around those issues, it makes people feel very concerned about the future. Now, I've got three kids who are 14, 11, and 7. They're in the public schools near our house. And you say, what is it that they're going to go into in the world? Is it going to be full of the kind of cynicism that we see in our politics? Let's divide people, let's hold power and serve the powerful moneyed interests that have gotten us elected? Or should we go a different way? And I'm very hopeful about this. A new framework for people who want to do the right things. That's what the United Independent Party is about.
What are the cornerstones, what would you say are the cornerstones of your campaign?
For starters, we've really got to be serious about health care. The cost of health care has gone up by so much because of the monopolistic consolidation of hospitals into these giant systems. It's what causes the prices to go up. It's what causes people to have to pay more money out of their pocket in insurance premiums every year. Now, it started under a Republican governor, Bill Weld, with Charlie Baker as his HHS secretary. It's continued through Democratic administrations. Martha Coakley just approved Partners buying a hospital system on the South Shore. And all it does is harm consumers. It doesn't help the quality of care. These things have to stop, and we have to change the economics of health care like they've done in other states.
What would you say that makes your campaign, your candidacy, different from the Democrats and the Republicans? What distinguishes it?
It's that combination. So when I say everyone's equal, everybody's civil rights have to be protected, and the government must spend our money wisely, it's a combination most voters don't think is represented by either of the two parties anymore. And so that means the ability to have real, meaningful conversations about the real issues that people are facing has been lost. And they get stuck in debates that are about issues that people aren't really interested in. So when we talk about health care, we know that the costs are going up because of the monopolistic consolidation of hospitals. But we hear arguments about Obamacare and the website and all these types of issues, and voters say this isn't my issue. When there isn't enough housing for people to live in, and the cost of living is so high because schools aren't being properly funded. When we hear about programs that help people, veterans facing trauma and other issues from war that aren't being funded, programs to help seniors that aren't being properly funded. You say, what are our real priorities in this state? They seem to be backwards, and they seem to be tied to the powerful moneyed interests that are causing so much damage to our politics and our democracy.
What do you think the three most important issues that the next governor is going to have to deal with will be? Well,
the cost of living is the most important. Driving down the cost of living is the most powerful thing we can do to help families have money in their pockets, to be able to save, to try to get ahead, to help them take care of their kids, to save for someone to go to college, to take care of a parent, maybe to start a business, maybe to be able to spend that money to help small businesses grow. It's the most important thing that we can do. Properly funding our education system. The state pays for cities and towns to school our kids, but hasn't updated the formula for doing this in 10 years. And the budget has stayed flat on education spending for so long. kids need to be educated properly. We have an obligation to them to do it, but it doesn't take place. So that's one of the other ones. And we have a very broken and outdated campaign finance system that keeps people out of the political process. As an independent, I'm operating on a 10-to-1 money advantage that the parties have put into place. If you're a Democrat or Republican, they let you raise up to $15,000 a year for your campaign. As an independent, me and my running mate Angus Jennings were allowed to raise $1,500. These are the kinds of systems and rules that are in place that were created by the two-party establishment. That's what keeps them in power. That money comes from those powerful moneyed interests. We have to change it and build a new framework to do so.
Now, I understand that you're bilingual. Now, you grew up in Newton. You live in Newton now. I guess tell me about that story.
Yeah, well, my grandfather emigrated from Ukraine down to Venezuela, and the reason he left was that most of his family was murdered because they were Jewish. And he, as a 14-year-old, managed to get away, wanted to come to the United States but couldn't get in, ended up in Cuba alone on a beach, lived there for a while, learned how to eat mangoes, got some odd jobs, saved some money, eventually moved to Venezuela and started a business. He wanted to make sure that his sons ended up in America, and he sent my father to live here when he was 14. I grew up with that culture and that knowledge of that struggle of what he was able to do. I'm also aware of the fact that in our country, in spite of all the great opportunities that exist, my ability to have that family story and to have the success we had is helped a lot by the fact that my skin is the color that it is. There are people here who are people of color who may have interesting stories of how they got to this country but don't have the same opportunities because of these problems that persist even today in our country.
You have been talking a lot about the recent Democratic convention here in Massachusetts, and you says it shows that the Democrats are moving to the left. The party's moving to the left. So you feel that the party's out of sync with the public in general?
It is, and this is the problem with the whole two-party establishment. They're both becoming, and there's so many studies on this, that they're both becoming more polarized on the left and on the right. And that's where the campaign money is for them. That's where a lot of those voter activists are. And what it leaves is the great mass of voters unrepresented. They're looking at a system and they're saying they're not talking about the issues that I'm worried about, that I'm concerned about. There's ideological battles that are going on both sides. So the premise of this campaign, the reason I got into this in the first place, and this is an entrepreneurial thing to do, to create a new party, to build that new framework, was that I thought there were enough people not being taken seriously by the system that we could build that new framework.
Now, by the way, I said you started off by saying you're an entrepreneur, so your background is you're a medical consultant?
It was a healthcare business I was the president of called Best Doctors, and it's an employee benefit that helps people get the right diagnosis. It was one of the fastest growing companies, private companies in America for 3 straight years. And it grew to over 600 employees during my time there.
You don't like this Partners healthcare deal. Partners wants to expand, buy some more hospitals. I guess they've made a deal with the Attorney General, Martha Coakley. But you don't like this healthcare deal, do you? The Partners deal.
I don't, and it's representative of what everybody knows is already going on in our economy, which is that if you're a powerful interest that has a lot of money, you can get rules written that apply just to you and nobody else. So Partners is doing things that are anti-competitive. They're distorting the market. They're making healthcare cost far too much money, and they get to do it because they're big and they're politically powerful.
I mean, they're saying that it's just going to lead to lower healthcare costs because
they're saying it. And it was interesting when they were being questioned on it. They said it would reduce costs, but in the deal that the Attorney General made, they're actually allowed to increase their prices. So you tell me what's going on. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you say. There was a noted professor who said this is a political deal, not a health care deal that the Attorney General made, and this is the problem with our politics. This is what makes people cynical. This is what makes them not vote, because they feel as if the system is inherently rigged against them. And these are real issues. People not having enough money to get by because their health care premiums are too high stands in stark contrast to listening to political leaders say, hey, I think health care needs to be affordable to everybody. It's not. And it's not for reasons that have to do with the way our system is set up.
I know you talk a lot about cutting the cost of living by overhauling what you refer to as an outdated housing policy. What do you mean by that?
Well, the way our state is set up, we've got 351 cities and towns, and they manage the way that housing gets constructed, and they feel as if it's not in their best interest financially to allow for more housing to be built. So we hear terms out there like child-proof zoning. There are cities and towns that aren't allowing for housing to be built, multifamily housing, so that young people can have a place to live. People on a median income can have a place to live. And there are studies that show we need more than 10,000 of these every year. We're not building them. Why doesn't it happen? It's not in the financial interest of cities and towns to do it. If the state would properly fund education and make it so that it was in the financial interest of cities and towns to allow for lots of new housing to be built, we could completely change the landscape of Massachusetts. Economic studies show if you want to grow the economy, best way to do it, build lots of housing. Massachusetts isn't building housing. That's why we're falling behind other states, other parts of the world. We can change it. The policies we have today are designed, they're not designed this way, but if you were going to design them to make Massachusetts on average older, have young people leave, have less economic activity, you'd have what we have today. We got to change it.
You mentioned education. A couple of things come to mind. Charter schools. I mean, do you think we should lift the cap in charter schools? And if you could say something about community colleges.
Yeah, I mean, there should be charter schools. People should have that choice, but we have to be properly funding education. So we're not in a situation where every single year we say when a child leaves to go to charter schools, there's less money for the public schools. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to take the decisions to not give out huge tax breaks to huge companies. Intel got a $300 million tax break. That kind of money could have gone to pay for funding of education, so we wouldn't have these fights between public school and charter schools.
You got some definite feelings about community colleges as well?
Indeed. I've been calling for the creation of a program to allow for kids who graduate from high schools in Massachusetts to go to community college for 2 years for free. They've been working on a program like that in Tennessee. I think we're up for that in Massachusetts, too.
What about diversity? These sweeping changes in our demographics across the country and here in Massachusetts. I guess where's diversity in your list of priorities, and that this is the concept of it all? Does it mean anything to you?
It's a lot. I mean, the Globe did a piece looking at the diversity of political campaigns, and my campaign showed up as one of the most diverse. I think that diverse organizations are stronger and better, not just because they have different people from different backgrounds on them, but the different perspectives that people bring. The preconceived notions that have to be challenged all the time and are all the time when you've got diverse organizations. So it's extremely important to me.
And finally, I guess in our remaining moments, what have you learned from campaigning around the state?
I've been struck by how many people feel unrepresented by the current system. I had the opportunity to meet with the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. They had a $200,000 line item in the state budget that got cut. It was put back in. Our system does not take people as seriously as it should. People know it, and it must change.
Okay, and we'll leave it right there. Evan Falchuk, the United Independent Party candidate for governor. You are the founder of the United Independent Party. Good luck on the campaign trail, and we'll be checking in from time to time.
Okay, thanks.